This is the M901 Improved Tow Vehicle, a Tier 6 squadron vehicle for the USA which fulfills the role of an anti-tank missile carrier at Tier 6 BR 8.0. This is a vehicle that I first looked at a little under a year ago, which was just after its addition into War Thunder, but since that time there have been a few changes which have prompted me to come back and give it a second look. In addition to that, there is also a new ground squadron vehicle that has been added in the form of the BMP-2M, which also made me wish to come back, revisit the M901 before I move on to researching the BMP-2. First off, let's start by mentioning a few of the changes that have been made to this vehicle since my last overview. Firstly, the battle gear has been removed. A little bit of background here: when the M901 is driving, the launcher unit that is responsible for firing the ATGMs is stowed away on top of the vehicle and will not be able to fire. Previously, there was a cruise control mode that would allow for slow driving with the launcher unit still deployed in the firing position. Since then though, that cruise control mode has been removed and the launcher will start to retract as soon as you start moving, even if only briefly. This can of course cause complications when at closer ranges to enemy vehicles, as you will usually need to wait around 5 to 7 seconds for the launcher to move into its firing position. A second major change is that the M901 lost its ability to float. The vehicle could previously float and sail around relatively easily. That ability has now been removed, which I can't actually confirm is correct. As far as I can find, the M901 was amphibious without any additional preparation in real life, so I do question why this ability was removed from the vehicle in game. It also is worth mentioning that despite losing its floating capability, there is still a plate on the front of the vehicle that will unfold as you enter the water, though of course, if you continue to drive into the water, you will sink and drown. So they are the two major changes that have affected the M901 since my previous video. There are of course a few other smaller changes, but they're relatively minor and not really worth mentioning. The M901 is currently placed at a BR of 8.0 and can be used as an effective support vehicle all the way up to top tier thanks to the 630mm of penetration provided by its improved tow anti-tank guided missiles. These can easily cripple any MBT from the side and most MBTs frontally if you know where to hit. The ITO also has almost 4 km of range, meaning that you can often maintain a significant distance between your vehicle and enemy targets, which will usually keep you out of the line of fire. The M901 also has reasonable mobility, which will make repositioning relatively easy in battle, although you should also keep in mind the retraction and extension times for the launcher unit, which as mentioned is around 5 to 7 seconds. As for armor, the M901 basically has none, so I really wouldn't expect to walk away from any shots, big or small. This will become painfully obvious when facing enemy close air support especially, as most aircraft will be able to go through the top of your vehicle with their guns. On the other hand though, the high placement of the launcher unit when extended will allow for a highly effective hull down playstyle. Your entire hull and crew complement can be well hidden and protected behind cover, and this is something that will certainly come in handy when facing enemy ground units at longer ranges. A feature that definitely bears mentioning here is the thermal sight. This is a tier 3 modification and will of course help to spot enemy vehicles, as their engine heat will make them much easier to see when you are in the thermal sight mode. If the M901 is damaged in the line of fire, you can call upon the 8 smoke grenades that are mounted on the front of the vehicle, although it is worth bearing in mind that they will all fire at the same time, so once they are used they are gone. Finally, moving on to camouflage options. These are the fairly standard American camos for a vehicle of this BR and tier, and at the time of making this video there is also a single market skin option. So jumping over into some gameplay, this is of course Ground RB. This game is on the map Maginot, and this is actually a really good map for the M901. Lots of hilly areas where you can use that hold down playstyle to its full advantage. Of course, we're currently driving away from the spawn, and as you can see the launcher unit is in the stowed position. The missiles cannot be fired, and the optics will be looking rearwards as they are of course a part of that launcher unit. Once we find a good spot, the launcher will then extend up to its firing position, and we'll be able to scan around for enemy targets. The optics, while somewhat blurry, will make it blatantly obvious where enemy vehicles are positioned, and you can then fire a missile if you feel you have a good chance of hitting. That was the case with this Object 120, solid hit to the side which hull broke his vehicle, giving me my first kill. Continuing to scan around, we're just making sure there's no one flanking on the hill, on sort of that hill section near the sea point. That is a fairly common flanking route for many enemy vehicles, so you got to keep a good eye out. Here's a German M41. He has no idea the missile's coming, driving straight towards me, single missile to the front of his vehicle, sets off the ammo, destroys his crew. Now that I've used both of the missiles in the launcher unit, the launcher folds down into the reloading position, a hatch opens, the crew would then of course load the new missiles, and then it moves back to the firing position. Having the thermals is quite useful for also spotting air targets, and of course the ATGMs are relatively quick. They are subsonic, but they are relatively speedy and relatively agile, so you can of course, like I did there, take down some slower flying air targets, in most cases helicopters, which will also tend to have their own ATGMs, so you might as well take them down before they take you down. This match is actually a fairly good example of how I would advise playing the M901, maintaining a somewhat considerable distance between you and the enemy, while also sitting in a safe hold down position and scanning the battlefield for enemy vehicles. In this way you can support your team and engage enemy targets with minimal risk to yourself or your vehicle. If you find yourself on a map though where this long-range engagement playstyle will not be possible, simply don't play the M901. Take out a vehicle on your lineup that will be more suited to the conditions of that map. The fact that the launcher unit retracts as soon as you begin to move your vehicle makes the M901 much less effective at closer ranges and can really hinder the vehicle's effectiveness when dealing with close-range enemy targets. For example, if you need to retreat, as soon as you begin to move away, you instantly lose your ability to engage the enemy, which in many cases will be fatal. It's also worth mentioning that the M901 only has 10 ATGMs, so it is wise to use them sparingly and only fire when you feel there is a high chance of the enemy remaining out in the open as your missile moves towards the target. If you decide to play out the M901, you will not usually have a major effect on the course of the battle. On open maps such as Maginot, it's not exactly advisable to push capture points, as it's likely you will get swiftly taken out by an enemy vehicle. Of course, the A point in the town could be a potential place to push, as you do actually have buildings to cover you, although then again, you will of course, if an enemy pulls out next to you, need to wait for that launcher unit to unfold before you can try and defend yourself. Nonetheless though, this playstyle is fairly effective, for scouting especially. You can let your team know where enemy vehicles are, even if at the time you are unable to engage. In most cases, the ATGMs will allow for one-shot, one-kill kind of situations. They have a relatively good amount of explosive mass. 630mm of pen means that they will generally go through pretty much anything at this battle rating, so most targets don't tend to be a problem. As mentioned previously, you could consider using the M901 as a backup support vehicle all the way up to top tier. Of course, it would be less effective at top tier, but it can be used at those kind of BRs. As has just been demonstrated, it doesn't really stand up well to aircraft. As mentioned previously, the armor is incredibly lacking, so most of your deaths will probably be revenge kills from enemies that you have ATGM'd as they jump into an aircraft and then come along and gun you down or bomb you. I think that that's all that I really need to show. In my honest opinion, the M901 is a support vehicle, and that's all that it should be. The M901 did used to be usable at closer ranges and in urban environments thanks to its battle mode on the cruise control, but since the removal of the said battle mode, its close range ability has been hindered considerably due to that launcher retraction at any speed. If you're at close range now, you will need to wait 5 to 7 seconds for the launcher to unfold, and by that time it's very likely an enemy vehicle would have been able to kill you. At least in its current state, the M901 excels at long-range engagement. Using that thermal sight to oversee the battlefield in most maps, you can easily see enemy threats, let your teammates know where those enemy threats are, or even better, engage those enemies yourself using the range that is provided by those ITO missiles. As far as I'm aware, the M901 currently costs 380,000 squadron points, which is a fairly reasonable cost considering its BR, tier, and the fact that it is something being researched on the side. Well, that's more or less it from me on the M901. It is a vehicle that I've played a fair amount with limited success. It really does depend on the map. It's a very situational vehicle. If you can get a large open map with some hills that you can use to camp and be in a hold down position, you can generally do quite well. Smaller maps, not so much. Anyway though, thank you very much for watching the video. If you did enjoy, please consider dropping a like, maybe even subscribe to the channel if you wish to see more content like this in the near future. That would be very much appreciated. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.